I was driving down the familiar tree-lined streets toward my parents' house in the outskirts of Portland, Oregon, and my heart felt lighter than it had in months. Thanksgiving. The smell of roasted turkey, the sound of laughter bouncing off the walls, the warmth of being surrounded by people who were supposed to love you no matter what. I could almost taste the cranberry sauce my mom always made from scratch. But then I remembered the text message my sister Jessica had sent 2 days earlier. We need to talk as a family. The words had been sitting in my stomach like a stone ever since. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe she wanted to announce a new promotion or talk about Christmas plans. I pulled into the driveway, grabbed the bag of gifts from the passenger seat, and walked toward the front door with a smile I hoped would feel real soon enough. Before I tell you what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you are enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next will completely change everything you think you know about family loyalty. Now, let me take you inside that house. The moment I stepped through the door, the smell hit me. Turkey roasting in the oven, mashed potatoes with butter melting into pools of gold, pumpkin pie cooling on the counter. My mom, Linda, was bustling around the kitchen in her floral apron, her gray hair pulled back in a loose bun. My dad, Bob, stood by the stove, basting the turkey with a concentration that made me smile. He looked up when I walked in and gave me a small nod. Not the bear hug I usually got, just a nod. In the living room, my older sister Jessica sat on the cream-colored couch with her husband Dylan beside her. Their 2 kids, Ethan and Lily, were on the floor playing with wooden blocks. Jessica was 32, 4 years older than me, and she looked every bit the polished suburban wife. Her blonde hair was perfectly curled. Her cashmere sweater probably cost more than my entire outfit, and her smile was nowhere to be found. When I said hello, she glanced up and gave me the kind of look you would give a stranger who had accidentally sat in your seat. Dylan did not even look at me. He just stared at his phone like it held the secrets of the universe. Ethan and Lily, who usually ran up to me, screaming, "Aunt Mia," stayed on the floor. Lily peeked up at me once, then looked away. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air, thick and heavy like humidity before a storm. I walked into the kitchen and set the wine bottle I had brought on the counter. My mom turned and gave me a tight smile. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, but her voice was strained. My dad kept his eyes on the turkey. I asked if they needed help with anything, and my mom shook her head a little too quickly. No, we are fine. Go sit down. Kyle should be here any minute." Kyle was my younger brother, 25 years old, who had just moved to Seattle for a new job in tech. I had not seen him in 6 months, and I was looking forward to catching up. I went back to the living room and sat in the armchair across from Jessica and Dylan. I tried to make conversation, asking about the kids, about work, about anything that might break the tension. Jessica answered in clipped sentences. Dylan said nothing. The kids stayed quiet. When Kyle finally arrived, he gave me a quick hug, but even that felt different. Distant, like he was hugging someone he barely knew. We all sat down at the long dining table, the one my parents had bought 20 years ago when they still believed in big family gatherings. My dad said grace, thanking God for the food and the family, and for a moment I thought maybe I had been imagining things. Maybe everything was fine. But then I noticed the way Jessica kept glancing at Dylan, the way they exchanged looks like they were communicating in a language only they understood. I picked at my mashed potatoes, trying to focus on the taste, but all I could feel was the knot tightening in my stomach. I asked my dad about his garden, about the tomatoes he had been growing. He gave me a short answer and went back to eating. I asked my mom about her book club. She smiled, but did not say much. Kyle told us about his new apartment in Seattle, about the view of the Space Needle from his window, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. But then Jessica cut him off. Some people know how to build a real future, she said, her eyes flicking toward me for just a second. I felt the sting of her words, but forced myself to smile. What is that supposed to mean? I asked, keeping my voice light. She shrugged. Nothing, just an observation. My parents said nothing. Kyle looked down at his plate. The air in the room grew heavier, and I realized that whatever was coming, it was coming soon. It happened right in the middle of dinner. Jessica stood up so suddenly that her chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. Everyone stopped eating. All eyes turned to her. Dylan stood up too, positioning himself right beside her, like they had rehearsed this moment. My heart started pounding. I have something important to say, Jessica announced, her voice steady and cold. I looked around the table. My parents were staring at their plates. Kyle was frozen fork halfway to his mouth. The kids had gone completely silent. Jessica looked directly at me, and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Not anger, not sadness, something worse, contempt. We have been talking, she said slowly, all of us for months now. My throat tightened. I glanced at my mom, my dad, Kyle. No one would meet my eyes. We took a vote, Jessica continued, as a family. The room felt like it was spinning. I opened my mouth to ask what she was talking about, but no words came out. And the decision is unanimous. She paused, letting the silence stretch out like a rubber band about to snap. You are not part of this family anymore. I laughed. I actually laughed because it was so absurd that it had to be a joke. What is this, some kind of prank? But no one was laughing. No one was smiling. Dylan crossed his arms over his chest and nodded, confirming what Jessica had just said. My dad stared at his plate like it was the most interesting thing he had ever seen. My mom had tears in her eyes, but she did not say a word. Kyle would not look at me. Dylan spoke next, his voice dripping with condescension. You have been a burden to this family for too long, Mia. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. A burden. Jessica nodded. You never contribute anything. You are just a school teacher. You make what, $40,000 a year, maybe less. I could not breathe. The walls were closing in. We have been supporting Mom and Dad financially. Jessica went on, her tone businesslike, as if she were presenting a report at a board meeting. Dylan and I pay for their medical bills. We cover the cost of home repairs. We bought them a new car last year. Dylan jumped in. And you, what do? You show up once a year with a cheap bottle of wine and expect to be treated like you matter. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I could not stop them. I looked at my dad silently, begging him to say something, anything. He finally spoke, but his voice was weak and defeated. Mia, sweetheart, he said, not looking at me, we love you, but Jessica has a point. My mom nodded, still crying, but she did not defend me. Kyle cleared his throat. I am sorry, Mia, he said quietly, but they are right. You need to grow up. Jessica stood taller, like she was about to deliver the final blow. So as of today, you are no longer invited to family events. You are not part of our lives anymore. And then Dylan started clapping. slow, deliberate claps that echoed in the silent room. Ethan and Lily, clearly coached by their parents, joined in. Then my dad. Then my mom. Then Kyle. The whole family was clapping, celebrating the fact that they had just voted me out of existence. I sat there, tears running down my face, feeling like my entire world had collapsed. But somewhere deep inside me, something shifted. I wiped my eyes and stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. You voted me out. Fine. Jessica smiled triumphant. Good. At least you understand. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick brown folder. I placed it on the table, right in front of Jessica. But before I leave, I said, my voice quiet but firm, there is something I need to give you. Jessica looked at the folder like it was a snake. What is this? I did not answer. I just smiled, a sad, tired smile. She opened it. For a few seconds there was silence. Then her face went pale. Her hands started trembling. She flipped through the pages, her eyes growing wider with each one, and then she screamed, What is this? Where did you get this? I did not say anything. I just watched as Dylan grabbed the folder from her hands and read it himself. His face turned white. My dad stood up. What is going on? Jessica turned to me, her voice shaking with rage and fear. You cannot do this. I looked at her calmly. I did not do anything. I just kept what was rightfully mine. My mom reached for the folder, but Jessica snatched it back. My dad demanded to know what was happening. Kyle looked confused and scared. I took a deep breath and finally explained. 3 years ago, Grandma Helen passed away, I began. My voice was steady now, the shock giving way to a strange calm. Before she died, she made a will. She left me her house in Cannon Beach. Jessica's face twisted. That is not true. It is true, I said. The house is worth about $750,000. She also left me $200,000 in savings. My mom gasped. My dad sat down heavily in his chair. Kyle's mouth fell open. In her will, I continued, Grandma Helen wrote that she was leaving everything to me because I was the only one who visited her regularly when she was sick. I went to see her every weekend for 2 years. I sat with her. I read to her. I held her hand when she was scared. I looked at Jessica. You and Dylan visited maybe 5 times. You were too busy with your perfect life. Jessica's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the folder. This is not fair. She was manipulated. You manipulated her. I shook my head. No, Jessica. She made her choice. And it was notarized. It is completely legal. Dylan finally found his voice. Why did you not tell anyone about this? Because, I said, looking around the table, I was planning to share it with all of you. I wanted to turn Grandma's house into a place where we could all go. A family retreat. I was going to tell you tonight, actually. I thought we could all use it together. My mom started sobbing. Oh, Mia, why did you not say something? Because I wanted it to be a surprise. I looked at Jessica. But now I understand why you were so eager to get rid of me. Jessica's face flushed red. That is not true. I pulled another sheet of paper from the folder. This is a letter from Grandma's lawyer. 2 months before she died, Dylan tried to visit her. He tried to convince her to change her will. He wanted her to split everything evenly among all the grandchildren. Dylan's face went from white to crimson. That is a lie. It is not a lie, I said. The lawyer documented everything. Grandma refused. She told him that you only cared about her money, not about her. I placed the letter on the table. She also recorded a conversation with me. In Oregon, that is legal, as long as one party consents. In that recording, she explains exactly why she is leaving everything to me. She says, and I quote, "Mia is the only one who loves me for who I am, not for what I have." The room was silent except for my mom's quiet crying. My dad looked at Jessica and Dylan like he was seeing them for the first time. Kyle stared at the table, his face pale. Jessica tried one last time. "This is a misunderstanding. We can work this out." I shook my head. "No, Jessica. This is exactly what it looks like. You and Dylan knew about the will. You found out somehow. And you thought that if you could get the family to turn against me, you could convince Mom and Dad to help you contest it. You probably already have a lawyer lined up." Dylan's silence confirmed everything. I looked at my parents. "You voted me out of this family. You chose money and status over me. You chose Jessica's version of success over everything I have ever done for you." My dad tried to speak. "Mia, we did not know." "You did not ask," I said. "You just assumed I was the problem. You assumed that because I am not rich, I am not valuable." I picked up the folder and held it close to my chest. "You voted me out. Fine. But you also voted yourselves out of Grandma's legacy. That house, that money, it is mine, and I will decide what to do with it." Jessica stood up, her voice rising to a shout. "You cannot do this. That house belongs to all of us. Grandma would have wanted us to share it." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I felt nothing but pity. If Grandma wanted you to have it, she would have left it to you. But she did not. She left it to me. And now you have to live with that. I turned and walked toward the door. "Oh," my dad called after me. "Mia, wait, please, we made a mistake." I stopped and turned around one last time. "You did make a mistake, but the mistake was not just tonight. It was every time you chose Jessica over me because she has money. It was every time you made me feel like I was not good enough because I chose to be a teacher instead of chasing a 6-figure salary." My mom was sobbing openly now. Kyle had his head in his hands. Jessica and Dylan stood frozen, their faces masks of shock and rage. "I love you," I said, my voice breaking. "But I cannot be part of a family that votes me out like I am some kind of problem to be solved." I walked out the door and did not look back. Behind me, I heard Jessica scream, "You cannot do this! That house belongs to all of us!" But I kept walking. The first week after Thanksgiving was the hardest. I went back to my small apartment in Portland, and I cried more than I had ever cried in my life. I felt hollow, like someone had reached inside me and pulled out everything that mattered. I called in sick to work for 3 days. I did not eat. I barely slept. I just lay on my couch and stared at the ceiling, replaying that dinner over and over in my mind. But I did not call anyone in my family. I did not answer their calls or texts, and there were many. My mom called 15 times the first day. My dad left voicemails begging me to come back so we could talk. Kyle sent long text messages, apologizing, saying he did not know what he was thinking. Even Jessica tried to reach me, though her messages were less apologetic and more demanding. "We need to discuss this like adults," she wrote. "You are being childish." I deleted every message without reading them fully. The second week, I met with Grandma Helen's lawyer. His name was Mr. Cranston, a kind man in his 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle voice. He walked me through the will, showed me all the documents, and confirmed that everything was legal and binding. No one could contest it. The house was mine. The money was mine. Grandma had made sure of that. "She talked about you often," Mr. Cranston said as we sat in his office. "She said you were the only one who understood her, the only one who did not see her as a bank account." I cried in his office and he handed me a box of tissues without saying a word. By the end of the first month, I had received over 100 messages from my family. My mom and dad sent letters in the mail, handwritten apologies that talked about how much they loved me and how sorry they were. Kyle sent flowers to my apartment with a card that said, "I was wrong. Please forgive me." Jessica sent an email with the subject line, "We need to talk," and a message full of legal threats disguised as reconciliation. I did not respond to any of them. I needed time. I needed space. I needed to figure out who I was without them. In the second month, I drove out to Cannon Beach to see the house for the first time since Grandma had passed. It was a small cottage, painted pale blue, with white shutters, sitting on a hill overlooking the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing against the rocks filled the air, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. I walked through the house, touching the furniture, the books on the shelves, the photographs on the walls. There were pictures of me and Grandma taken during the summers I had spent here as a kid. I remembered running on the beach, collecting shells, sitting on the porch while she told me stories about her life. This was not just a house. It was a sanctuary. And I decided right then that I was not going to sell it. I was going to keep it. I was going to make it my own. Over the next few months, I started fixing the place up. I painted the walls, replaced the old curtains, bought new furniture. I invited my closest friends, the people who had been there for me when my family was not to come stay for weekends. We cooked meals together, walked on the beach, sat by the fire, and talked about life. It became a place of healing. Kyle reached out again in the 4th month this time with a handwritten letter. He did not make excuses. He just said he was sorry. He said he had moved out of my parents' house and cut off contact with Jessica. He said he understood if I never wanted to speak to him again, but he hoped I would give him a chance to prove he had changed. I thought about it for a long time. Then I agreed to meet him for coffee. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, and he cried as he apologized. He told me he had been scared that night that Jessica had convinced him I was the problem that he did not know about the will or the house. He said he had been stupid and weak, and he would spend the rest of his life making it up to me if I let him. I did not forgive him right away, but I told him we could start over slowly. And we did. It took months, but eventually we rebuilt something. Not what we had before, but something new. Something honest. My parents kept trying. They sent more letters, more calls, more apologies. But I told them I needed to see action, not words. I needed them to prove that they valued me for who I was not, for what I could give them. I did not shut the door completely, but I did not run back to them either. Jessica never apologized. Not really. She sent one final email 6 months after Thanksgiving, saying that I had ruined the family and that she hoped I was happy. I deleted it and blocked her number. A year later, I was sitting on the porch of Grandma's house, watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the sound of the waves was the only noise I needed. I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner, about the moment Jessica stood up and told me I was not family anymore. And I realized something. She had given me a gift. She had forced me to see the truth. Family is not about blood. It is not about who you share a last name with. It is about who shows up for you, who loves you when you have nothing to offer, who values you for who you are not, for what you can give them. I did not hate Jessica anymore. I pitied her. She was so obsessed with money and status that she could not see what really mattered. She had everything and nothing at the same time. I learned that my worth is not measured by my salary or my job title. It is measured by how I treat people, by the love I give, by the kindness I show. I learned that walking away is not weakness. It is strength. It is knowing that you deserve better. I picked up my phone and saw a new message from Jessica. It had come in that morning. Please, Mia, I am sorry. Can we start over? I stared at the message for a long time. Maybe one day I would be ready to talk to her. Maybe one day I would be able to forgive her completely. But not today. Today, I just wanted to sit here and watch the sunset and feel grateful for the peace I had found. I used to think family meant forever. Now I know it means something much deeper. It means choosing every single day to show up for the people who show up for you. And sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to walk away. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because they did not value you? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose yourself over family? I would love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your support means the world to me. Thank you for listening, and I hope you find the courage to choose yourself when you need to. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be loved. And you deserve peace.